It's been a few weeks since the epic debate between James Wilkes and Wilkes-Kresser occurred, which really the word epic isn't really a justified term to describe the slaughtering that occurred, but rather the complete and utter decimation of Wilkes-Kresser. It's crazy to believe that these two men took almost 4 hours to discuss a few topics as to the possibility of acquiring cancer from dairy consumption, macronutrient partitioning, B12 deficiency, the potential for B12 deficiency if you follow a plant-based diet, protein requirements, the effect of certain foods on endothelial function, and a few other debating bits. The fact that Wilkes-Kresser sources most of his studies from industry without informing you he does such a thing is just a simple indicator of how much of a little weasel he is. Chris used a meta-analysis that was primarily comprised of other dairy industry funded studies in an attempt to prove that dairy doesn't cause cancer or has no association with cancer, which anyone who has read any bit of scientific literature would advise you that when reading industry-funded literature to be very skeptical, and you should have your radar up for any type of flaws in the study design or anything of that nature, because it's just very commonplace for them to do such a thing as they're in the business of trying to sell products. Now, this was a topic that went back and forth for about like 30 minutes or so, but the ass whooping really didn't begin to about the 1 hour and 6 minute mark. You know, James Wilkes laying Wilkes-Kresser the fuck out. This discussion of B12 came up, and it was just all downhill from there for the honorable professor of the month, Wilkes-Kresser. I mean, this is a huge deal because this is the first time Joe Rogan has been able to witness one of his supposed experts just get completely shut down and look like a complete idiot. This is definitely a huge ordeal for two main reasons. One, Joe Rogan has a huge platform with millions of downloads from subscribers and listeners from all over the world, and they are now finally bearing witness to Wilkes-Kresser being exposed for the weasel he is. Two, Joe himself is realizing how much of a bullshit artist Wilkes-Kresser is because he doesn't really rely on scientific literature that is not funded by industry. He doesn't know how to interpret scientific literature when he sources it, and he makes heinous and false statements without having any solid evidence to back it up. So where is Joe Rogan standing? Is Joe going vegan tomorrow? I mean, I wouldn't bet on it. I would say probably not. The guy's not going to go vegan anytime soon. And I would say he's probably not going to go vegan anytime soon because he receives way too much damn money from sponsors like ButcherBox and God knows who else. And I'm pretty sure he's got a stake or he owns a piece of On It with Aubrey Marcus. I'm not sure about that, or if he doesn't own a piece of that company, then I know for a fact that he at least is a sponsor of On It. So he's got something going on there, and on top of that, again, On It sells a bunch of animal products. But with all that said, regardless of the matter, the blinds have been removed from his eyes, or at least moved back. He has been removed from his own little echo chamber that he has created for himself, and he can finally see the truth behind plant-based nutrition. You know, Jim Carrey once said, "And the truth shall set you free." And hence it shall, since it is so important to stick to the truth, now that Joe has come to the realization that eating animal products is not necessary. Forget about the fact that animal flesh and animal secretions are unhealthy. We don't even have to go that deep. But if you want to see why animal products are not healthy, then make sure you check out my playlist that I've created on that, and make sure to share it with anyone who's still on the fence or anyone who thinks that animal products are essential or optimal or healthy, or if maybe that person is still living in the days of listening to rumors, pseudoscience and bro science, or reading magazine articles for information, or I don't know, wherever these people get their information from. But I digress. Joe knows the truth and has admitted it as shown here.
Mostly wound up agreeing with the guy who made the GameChangers documentary in terms of science, in terms of whether or not it's healthy to eat a 100% vegan diet. According to everything he's showing me, it is.
It is?
Yeah, according to everything he was showing me, and he had as much science as you could.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a matter of doing it properly.
This was actually on a Joe Rogan podcast that was held right after the debate between Wilkes and Kresser, which was actually brought to light to me from arthritis to athlete. He's a plant-based YouTuber, so make sure to check out his channel. Please subscribe and show the guy some support. He has an interesting perspective on things, very entertaining and legitimate content. He didn't actually show me this content. I just noticed I saw one of his videos and he actually shared it. And so the guy gives up some pretty good info, so make sure to give him a thumbs up and a subscribe, because the guy has some pretty good content. If you like my content, I'm sure you'll like his content. He's a little bit more upbeat and enlightening. He's got a, you know, funny personality and stuff, so I think you'll like his content. So give the guy some support. I'm sure he'll greatly appreciate it, and so would I, so thanks. So the point being is that Joe Rogan now knows the truth in regards from a nutritional standpoint. A whole foods, plant-based, vegan diet is fully adequate for all stages of life. He gets that. That being said, why is Joe Rogan still not vegan or plant-based, whatever label you want to throw at him? Why is he still eating animal flesh? Here's why. He's going to need a mind-opening experience, which will have to come from a very strong moral perspective, but still keeping a minor emphasis on health and nutrition, because it seems to be the first unjustified fallback reason for Joe to continue to support animal exploitation. Of course, there's always that argument that Joe eats the animals he hunts, but there's a problem there. He doesn't just eat the animals he hunts, which that's a topic that we're gonna have to talk about in regards to hunting. My dude, Red Pill Vegan, just made a video kind of touching that topic, talking about hunting in that regard. That's definitely a topic worth of discussion. We definitely need to talk about that, dude. We got to set something up or something, but definitely we got to talk about that, because that's something actually I've talked a lot about with people around me in regards to hunting and all that stuff, and the moral implications and the ethics behind all that stuff, whether it's spiritual or, I don't know, Red Pill Vegan brought up some stuff about that, but that's a topic for a different day. I don't want to get off into a tangent. Let's try to stay on course here. Sorry, guys. So anyways, back on topic here. Joe is notoriously known for eating fast food on his cheat days. He talks about it, how he loves fast food, and you know, what's his favorite burgers.
In-N-Out are the best hamburgers, right?
No. Five Guys pretty goddamn good too.
Never had Five Guys.
Five Guys with sliced jalapenos.
Dude, I'm down with Wendy's. I love Wendy's. I love their fries.
Oh, Wendy's on another level.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a big Burger King guy. Shout out to Burger King. When I'm done with the show and there's nothing else open, I'll go to Burger King and I go, you know what? Give me 2 fucking Whoppers, ketchup only.
Over Mickey D's?
Oh, yeah.
You know what? With Wendy's, their
only.
beef is never frozen. That's how they get you.
But they're in squares, so I judge
I don't
them.
mind
I
squares.
worked at McDonald's for
no problem with that
for
square.
3 weeks.
And the guy also eats at restaurants while he's on the road, I'm sure, doing his comedy work, or when he has to fly to different states or, you know, different countries. I'm sure he's eating out at different restaurants and stuff like that when he's doing work for his comedy or UFC work or whatever other piece of business the guy does. I mean, the guy works like a savage. He has a crazy schedule, and it seems that he even eats at restaurants when he's there in Los Angeles. So he doesn't just eat the food. He doesn't just eat the animals he hunts. Do you think all those animals and the secretions of all those animals that Joe Rogan is eating while he's on the road or back home or wherever he's at, whenever he's going out to restaurants and all that stuff, or even when he goes to the supermarket, do you think those are wild caught game? No. Oh no. But oh yeah, that's right. They're all animals that lived in this magical, happy, free-range, grass-fed fairy tale land, right? Although free-range, grass-fed, free-range, whatever, rainbows and butterflies bullshit story that people want to tell themselves doesn't mean shit, if you ask me, and that's not really a subject I'm about to get into, does it really matter where these animals are coming from? Whether it's from this free-range fairy tale land or a factory farm setting? We've already established that a whole foods, plant-based vegan diet is fully healthy and fully sustainable. Therefore, it is unnecessary to eat animals. So why is he still eating animals? Because no one's brought this topic up to Joe. Someone needs to address this question to Joe. If it's not necessary, if it's not essential to eat animal flesh, or it's not necessary to exploit animals, then why are you doing it? It's not necessary, so why aren't you vegan? Why aren't you following a whole foods, plant-based vegan diet that is fully healthy and sustainable for all stages of life? Joe, why aren't you doing this? And then after that's done, he needs to make himself hold himself accountable for his own actions. Does that make sense? I don't know if it does. All I'm saying is that no one needs to hold him accountable. He just needs to hold himself accountable. That's it. This is something that I recommend everyone do with themselves if you haven't done it already, and hold everyone closest to you personally accountable for these atrocities, as this is a complete embarrassment to human history. I'm not saying to shame anyone. I'm not telling to make someone feel like a piece of shit, because most people just don't know and aren't educated. I'm not saying to do that. I'm just saying make them aware. That's it. People just need to be aware of their actions, of what they're doing and these atrocities that they're committing, and it asks them if they want to be a part of this ridiculous, heinous shit that's going on. I guarantee you most people don't want to be a part of this disgusting shit. The fact that we exploit and kill billions of land animals each year and kill somewhere in the trillions of sea animals each year is just horrific and disgusting. I mean, what the hell are we doing here? Of course, education is key, so assuming the basics of plant-based nutrition have been interpreted and fully understood from every individual, there is no reason to not be vegan in today's modern society. It's the cheapest, healthiest, and most ethical way for humans to live to date. So I think it's pretty fair to say it should be the default lifestyle for all. For example, the default way for adults to have sex is to have consensual sex, right? You have two consenting parties and they agree to have sex. I mean, it's not like a contract or some shit, but you agree. You usually agree. It's two parties, get it on, whatever, right? That's usually the trend, right? Otherwise, that's also known as rape. I mean, you don't just go out into the street, find the first attractive person, and then rape that individual because you want to for sensory pleasure. I mean, the vast majority of people living on planet Earth would say that's a horrific, heinous thing to do, right? Well, why are we doing it then? I'm not talking about rape, but I'm talking about to animals. Why are we exploiting these animals for sensory pleasure? That's ridiculous. So that same logic needs to be applied to Joe and what's on Joe's plate. Now, if only someone could get onto Joe Rogan's podcast and be as blunt and as aggressively honest with Joe as James Wilkes was with Slapnuts. I mean, Wilkes-Kresser. Sorry. Oh. Now that guy might work. I know there's a whole lot of controversy with Gary Yourofsky, and he's retired, but you gotta love his message and lack of bullshit tolerating mentality. I think Gary knows just enough to keep Joe on track without having him go off on a tangent talking about combine harvesters killing more animals than animal agriculture or animal protein or whatever bro science filled argument Joe may try to bring up to justify his bad habits. As much as I would love for this to happen, I think the chances of this happening are very, very slim. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't have to be Gary Yourofsky who can shed this light on Joe. It can be anyone who has a basic understanding of nutrition, ethical, moral standards that are consistent and are exemplified by their own actions, and is not afraid of putting Joe's feet to the fire when necessary. If this were to ever happen, I think plenty of people would be very, very surprised because I believe Joe Rogan responds well to this no bullshit mentality. I actually really think Joe Rogan would have no other chance or would be left with no other option but to go plant-based or, vegan or whatever, plant-based, whatever fucking label he wants to use. And the reason why I think he would have to go is because if he doesn't change over, then he would be a hypocrite if he's educated. And I don't think he wants to be a hypocrite. I don't think anyone wants to be a hypocrite, hence why people use stupid excuses to justify their bad habits. And let me just say, I'll be the first to say, I enjoy some of Joe Rogan's comedy. I've said this before in one of some of my previous videos. And I enjoy some of his podcasts, except when he goes on his little bro science rants, which, he has over the past year or so I haven't been paying too much attention to his podcasts, but whatever. Deep down inside, I think Joe Rogan is a good person. I just think he hasn't been challenged face to face with his dietary moral, with this dietary moral and global issue of what is going to be on his plate. I could only hope that this transaction of conversation will happen eventually, or at least happens one day. Probably not, but I guess I could hope, right? Maybe it will. Well, that's about it, everyone. Those are my 2 cents in regards if Joe Rogan will ever go vegan. I think it's a question worth asking. I know Joe Rogan's just one person, but he does have a huge influence on millions of people. A lot of people do listen to his podcast. The guy is the Oprah Winfrey of podcasting, and he deserves it if you ask me. The guy worked his ass off. So, please let me know what you think in the comment sections down below. I love to engage with all of you. Please feel free to subscribe, like, hit the ding dong button, the whole spiel. How YouTube's got this stuff going. You guys know who I am. I'm glad to be back. I'm the Natural Hulk. So I want to thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for the next one.